They sold over 150 million records worldwide. They had more than 20 songs crash into the Billboard Top 40. They filled stadiums across 6 decades and became the sound of American hard rock itself. Then the drugs destroyed them. Then the egos tore them apart. Then Joe Perry walked out in 1979, and the band nearly died. Members couldn't share the same elevator. They lost millions in the wilderness years. And decades later, even after a miraculous comeback, Steven Tyler's shattered vocal cords forced them into permanent retirement in 2024. This is the story of how success created legends and enemies in equal measure. A tale of brotherhood wrecked by the very thing they fought for: fame, fortune, and the right to be called rock gods. But to understand the collapse, we have to go back to Boston, 1970. Boston in 1970 wasn't waiting for rock stars. It was a working-class city where dreams were crushed as often as they were born. Rock wasn't a luxury, it was survival, an escape route from factory floors and dead-end futures. That's where 5 guys came together, each playing a role that would define Aerosmith for the next half-century. Steven Tyler, the visionary. Born in New York City in 1948, he was the frontman with the voice, the lips, and the swagger that could command any room. Joe Perry, the engine. Born in Lawrence, Massachusetts in 1950, he was the guitarist whose tone could cut through concrete and whose riffs became the backbone of every Aerosmith song that mattered. Tom Hamilton, the steady hand on bass. Born on New Year's Eve 1951, the quiet craftsman keeping the chaos grounded. Brad Whitford, the second guitar, born in 1952, who replaced original member Ray Tabano in 1971 and locked in the classic lineup. And Joey Kramer, born June 21, 1950, the drummer who gave the band its name and its relentless pulse. They played their first gig on November 6, 1970, at Nipmuc Regional High School in Mendon, Massachusetts. Nobody in that gym knew they were watching the birth of something massive. What made Aerosmith different wasn't just their sound, it was their identity. They were blues-based hard rock with an edge. They had swagger without apology. They mixed the grit of the Rolling Stones with the raw power of Led Zeppelin, but they made it distinctly American. Fans latched onto the danger, the sex, the rebellion. Critics didn't know what to do with them. Too raw for pop. Too hooky for the underground. Their self-titled debut dropped in January 1973. It didn't explode, it simmered. But buried inside was a ballad called Dream On, which would eventually become one of their signature anthems. Then came Get Your Wings in 1974. Still building. Still grinding. But even in the beginning, the seeds of destruction were already there. The band had signed contracts they didn't fully understand. The lifestyle was already getting dangerous. The touring schedule was brutal. And most critically, the spotlight wasn't shared equally. Steven Tyler was the face. Joe Perry was the sound, and everyone else was starting to feel the imbalance. The time bomb was ticking. Everything changed in 1975. Toys in the Attic hit like a freight train. Suddenly, Aerosmith wasn't a promising band, they were the band. The album went on to sell over 8 million copies. Songs like Sweet Emotion and Walk This Way dominated top 40 radio. Fans were obsessed. Critics were still skeptical, but the numbers didn't lie. Then came Rocks in 1976, an album that cemented their status as one of the most important hard rock acts in America. To this day, Rocks is cited by bands like Guns N' Roses, Metallica, and Motley Crue as a foundational influence. It was raw. It was powerful. It was everything rock and roll was supposed to be. But beneath this triumph, the pressure was building quietly. The touring schedule was insane. The band was on the road constantly, playing stadium after stadium, festival after festival. The money was pouring in, but so were the drugs. Cocaine, heroin, everything. Steven Tyler and Joe Perry earned the nickname, the Toxic Twins, for a reason. Their intake was legendary, even by rock star standards. What fans didn't see was the growing divide inside the band. Tyler was the showman, Perry was the riff machine, but the other members were starting to feel like sidemen in their own band. The lifestyle was diverging. Some guys wanted to slow down. Others wanted to chase the high forever. And that's where the trouble began. The band kept winning. More hits, more tours, more money. But offstage, the fractures were spreading. Responsibility was unequal. Creative control was contested. And the drugs weren't helping anyone make better decisions. The real cost was building quietly. Every sold-out show came with a backstage blow-up. Every chart success masked a deeper resentment. The band was becoming a machine, and machines break down. By the late 1970s, Aerosmith was untouchable. They were filling arenas. They were moving millions of records. They were the bad boys from Boston, living the dream at full volume. But that moment of glory was also the beginning of the end. Because while they looked unstoppable on stage, Tyler spinning microphone stands, Perry locked in with that signature tone, the crowd roaring, everything offstage was cracking. The drugs had gone from recreational to catastrophic. The ego clashes were no longer arguments, they were wars. And then came the incident that would break them. July 28, 1979. The World Series of Rock Festival in Cleveland. Backstage, the tension was unbearable. Joe Perry's wife and Tom Hamilton's wife got into an argument. It escalated. Milk was thrown. It sounds almost comical now, but in that moment, it was the final straw for Joe Perry. He was done. Perry walked out. He left Aerosmith at the height of their fame and formed the Joe Perry Project. The band that had conquered the world was suddenly missing half of its creative core. Steven Tyler tried to keep Aerosmith alive, but the magic was gone. Brad Whitford left shortly after to pursue his own projects. The classic lineup was shattered. They released Rock in a Hard Place in 1982, without Perry, without the chemistry, without the soul. It flopped. Commercially, critically, spiritually, it was a disaster. The consequences were immediate and brutal. Chart positions slid. Money dried up. The identity of the band was compromised. Fans didn't know who Aerosmith even was anymore. The lowest moment? Watching Joe Perry and Steven Tyler, once inseparable, once called the Toxic Twins, unable to even speak to each other. Watching a band that had defined an era reduced to a cautionary tale about excess and ego. Trust was shattered. Members were scattered. Aerosmith was dead in everything but name. The early 1980s were dark. Joe Perry was struggling with the Joe Perry Project. Steven Tyler was drowning in addiction. The others were trying to find their footing in a music industry that had moved on. But then something extraordinary happened. In 1984, Joe Perry and Steven Tyler met again. They talked. They fought. They reconciled. Perry rejoined Aerosmith. Brad Whitford came back. The classic lineup was whole again. But reunion alone doesn't guarantee success. The band was older, sober, some of them at least, and the music world had changed. Hair metal was rising. Synth pop was everywhere. Who wanted blues-based hard rock from a band that had flamed out? Then came the collaboration that changed everything. In 1986, Aerosmith teamed up with Run DMC to rework Walk This Way. It was a gamble, Rock and hip-hop hadn't truly merged before. But it worked. The song bridged two audiences and introduced Aerosmith to an entirely new generation. MTV played it constantly. Radio couldn't ignore it. Suddenly, Aerosmith wasn't a nostalgia act. They were relevant again. Permanent Vacation dropped in 1987, and it was a smash. Polished production, outside songwriters, radio-friendly hooks. It was a new Aerosmith, rebuilt for a new era. Then came Pump in 1989 with hits like Janie's Got a Gun, which tackled serious subject matter and proved the band could evolve. By 1993, Get a Grip turned Aerosmith into a global powerhouse again. The tour was massive. The album sold millions. The band was back on top. For a moment, it felt like closure. Like they'd beaten the demons and won. But the story wasn't over. Decades later, new fractures appeared. Joey Kramer, the drummer who'd been there since day one, started having conflicts with the band over touring commitments. By the 2020s, Kramer was occasionally sitting out tour legs. John Douglas, a touring drummer, filled in. The official story was health and logistics. But insiders knew there was tension. Then came the moment every Aerosmith fan had dreaded. In 2024, Steven Tyler's voice gave out. Not from partying. Not from drama. From physical breakdown. He'd fractured his larynx. His vocal cords were shattered. Doctors delivered the verdict. He couldn't tour anymore. In August 2024, Aerosmith officially retired from touring. The band that had survived overdoses, breakups, comebacks, and reinventions couldn't survive biology. Tyler's voice, the voice that had screamed through Dream On, that had soared on I Don't Want to Miss a Thing, that had defined 6 decades of rock and roll, was gone. Joe Perry hinted in interviews that maybe, someday, there could be one final show. A documentary tie-in. A tribute. But even he sounded unsure. The legacy war wasn't about money this time. It was about something harder to resolve. Acceptance. Accepting that time wins. That even legends have limits. Today, Aerosmith's catalog still generates millions through streaming, licensing, and reissues. Their brand remains powerful. Steven Tyler has pursued solo projects and television appearances, including a stint as a judge on American Idol. Joe Perry still plays guitar, still releases music. Tom Hamilton, Brad Whitford, and Joey Kramer have their own paths. But they'll never share a stage as Aerosmith again. Their story is one of the most American rock tales ever told. 5 guys from Boston who clawed their way to the top, fell into the abyss, somehow climbed back out, and then watched time do what drugs and egos couldn't, end them for good. They won 4 Grammy Awards. They were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2001. They influenced everyone from Guns N' Roses to Metallica. They sold over 150 million records worldwide. They gave us Dream On, Sweet Emotion, Walk This Way, Janie's Got a Gun, and I Don't Want to Miss a Thing, a song that finally gave them their first Billboard #1 single in 1998. But the meaning of their story isn't just the hits. It's survival. It's the fact that success created legends and enemies. That harmony hid rot. That the system nearly destroyed the brotherhood, but they fought back anyway, even if just for a while. Joe Perry once said that maybe, just maybe, there could be one more show. A final goodbye. But as of now, that future remains uncertain. What remains certain is this: Aerosmith's music will outlive every battle, every betrayal, every broken promise. The songs endure. The legacy endures. Even if the band could not. What part of this story hits you most? Did you ever see them live, in the comeback era or the early days? Drop your memory or opinion below. And if you want more deep dives into the rise and fall of rock legends, hit subscribe, because this is just the beginning.